Anamorphic? More like anamorphic, which is not what this lens is. The brand spanking new Sirui 24mm, I know I'm not saying that right, f2.8 anamorphic lens is actually not thick at all. Is small, made entirely of metal, and similar in size to your average small prime photo lens. For $1,000 USD, can this little lens actually stack up to the competition when it comes to higher end anamorphics, or is it just a gimmick? We're gonna dive deep into it right after this 3-second intro. This company that I still can't pronounce sent me this lens free of charge, and I do get to keep it after review, but they're not paying me any money and they're not telling me what to say. They don't get to see this video before you do because you're special and I love you. So I'm gonna give you my 100% honest review in this video. All of the footage that you're seeing in this video is captured on the beloved Fuji X-T4 with the 24mm anamorphic, obviously, and it's being recorded by the Atomos Ninja 5 in ProRes HQ. But if you shoot with a camera other than Fuji, don't worry, it comes in multiple mounts. We got Canon EF-M, Micro Four Thirds, Nikon Z mount for some reason, Sony E, and of course X mount. Now keep in mind that this lens does not cover full frame sensors. It's designed to cover APS-C, Super 35 sensors, or Micro Four Thirds. But some Sony full frame cameras do have an APS-C mode, which punches in on their higher resolution sensors to still give you 4K, but you're in an APS-C sized sensor mode. So you could use a lens like this on some full frame Sonys. This lens is a 1.33x anamorphic lens, so when you de-squeeze the images in post, it comes out to a 2.4:1 wide movie aspect ratio. So cool. This is another reason that I chose to shoot everything on the Atomos Ninja 5, because on this monitor it has a de-squeeze function, which is super handy when you're trying to pull focus and frame things on an anamorphic lens. The X-T4 does not have an internal de-squeeze, but some mirrorless cameras do. Like I think the GH5 does, which is very handy. And pulling focus and framing with an anamorphic lens without de-squeeze would be really, really difficult. Probably make things look pretty wonky, let's be honest. That's just something to think about if you want to use this lens or their other anamorphic lenses in a run and gun situation. Speaking of de-squeeze, Potato Jet, wonderful creator, found out that sometimes the images that come from this lens don't look properly de-squeezed when you add a 1.33x de-squeeze in post. Like for instance, even this shot of me with this talking head footage, I feel like my face looks wider than normal, or I've been eating too much Snickers lately, I don't know. So just keep that in mind if you want absolutely perfect de-squeeze on all your footage for a short film or something. You might have to do some different adjustments in post-production to make everything look accurate to real life. And that's kind of frustrating that it adds a whole nother step in post if you want things perfect. But at the same time, that's pretty much the only trade-off for using a lens like this, and it's only $1,000 for compact anamorphic. That's never really been done before at 24mm. It's kind of worth the trade-off in my opinion. A lens like this hasn't really existed yet at this price point. Imagine taking a giant Atlas anamorphic or Panavision anamorphic on a hike by yourself to make a vlog. You could do it, but it would be really dangerous, really stupid, and probably a total hassle. It's really cool that we have this option that's compact, portable, and affordable, baby. Ship it. This lens is built incredibly well. It seems to be made entirely of some sort of metal or aluminum or vibranium, one of the three. The mount fits securely on your camera, and the focus and aperture rings are nice and smooth, with the aperture ring being slightly more stiff. However, I did bump the aperture a couple times while filming the low light shots outside, and it did kind of decrease my amount of light that I was able to work with, which was a user error. So I would just say, be careful to check your aperture every time right before you hit record. Seems obvious, but not for people like me. The minimum focus distance for this lens is about 1.97 feet. That's really good for an affordable lens like this, and I'm about as close as possible to the lens without losing focus on my face. So this is kind of what you're working with. The front filter thread is 72mm, which is super common, and I use a 72 to 82 step-up ring to put my Moment 2 to 5 stop variable ND on the front. guys, let's put on our pretentious filmmaker hats while we talk about lens characteristics. All right, for people who aren't super familiar with anamorphics, what are the basic traits that every anamorphic lens, for the most part, has? Well, it's gotta shoot in a wide aspect ratio. It has to have flares. It's gotta have some flares. And for the love of all things sacred, it absolutely must have ovals. Ovals. You know when you shoot a photo with a photo lens and the bokeh is circular? Get that crap out of here. I want ovals now. Wide aspect ratio, check. Flares, however, is a highly debated topic amongst anamorphic lovers. Some people like thick, fat, blue sci-fi flares, and some people like minimal flaring or no flaring at all. The whole thing is totally up to personal preference. My opinion, I actually like the flares from this lens. They're kind of long, skinny, blue, and for the most part aren't too overwhelming in the frame. There were a couple shots in the low light scenes where it seemed like every source of light in the shot was creating a flare that seemed a little bit distracting, but for the most part, it's not too much. It's just right for me, does a good job, and you gotta keep in perspective that this is an affordable $1,000 anamorphic lens. So at the end of the day, those trade-offs are totally worth getting such a cool looking image out of this lens. We also do get the famous oval bokeh balls that we're so desperate to find in our footage.
What's your 12-second review?
Ovals! It looks sick.
I do wish the ovals were a bit more ovular, but I think the images from this lens are definitely distinct enough where you can tell it wasn't shot on a photo lens and then you added black bars. We're all guilty of it. I've added a black bar or two in my day. I'll admit it right here, right now, and you have too. And that's who this lens is for. People like you and I who have committed black bar sins before, but now we're going for a more cinematic look, but it's more authentic because we're shooting on a real anamorphic lens to achieve that more movie-like look. Take a peek at these screenshots from Mission Impossible Fallout. I really like how that movie looks. I love the oval bokeh. The flares aren't too overwhelming, but they do kind of poke into the shots once in a while and kind of overwhelm some of the frames, which I think is kind of cool. It's kind of interesting just to stack up a frame from some simple test footage on a bridge to a extremely expensive Hollywood-produced film. And I'm not saying that these two shots are the same quality by any means. Mission Impossible was shot on Arri film cameras with Panavision C and E anamorphic lenses. You can tell I don't know much about those. But for you and me who are making budget stuff, just fun stuff at home, or maybe you want to document your kids and make it look more cinematic or something, this is such a cool option, and I'm so glad that these kinds of things are being made. Personally, I'm super excited about this line of anamorphic lenses from Sirui, that company, and I would highly recommend trying out the 24mm anamorphic. Always remember, life is short, like vid, subscribe channel, and you're not a real filmmaker unless you shoot anamorphic. See you next week.